mannered patch clamp physiologist. I used to make recordings from 2 or more neurons at the same time and see if they were connected. And I did that in mouse and rat brain slices. Very mundane, niche work. Only, you don't impress people with that at a coffee or at a dinner party very often. But I have publications that go back to the year 2000 or 2001, maybe 2002. I don't know. I've worked in Switzerland doing this. I learned this from a guy by the name of Henry Markram, who was actually the guy who was the head of the Blue Brain Project and the Human Brain Project, I believe. Was it called the Human Brain Project? Anyway, it was a $1 billion 10-year grant in the EU. It was very controversial. I'm not saying that guy was some kind of super smart wizard guy. He was actually maybe a little smart and a little bit of salesman-y. He now works, or he actually started the Frontiers line of scientific journals. But there's no question he was a visionary in terms of thinking about how we could think about solving the problem of the brain. I'm not saying that he made tremendous progress in that direction, but he made a lot of progress in getting people to think big about trying to do that. And here's me building a rig in Norway, or working on my rig in Norway, where I had a co-authorship on a science paper and a Nature paper. And so it's like a Nature neuroscience paper. It's just to say that I had a decent career. I mean, I wasn't a flunky. And I came to Pittsburgh kind of resigning to the fact that I was going to be a middle guy. And I might not be the head of the department ever, but I thought I deserved my own lab. I thought I could definitely have my own lab. And so I was thinking I was going to write a grant and get some money eventually. And so I had this YouTube channel, and on this YouTube channel, I was doing neuroscience. And then I started on February 21st as my 3rd ride where I was talking about COVID-19. And here I'm giving credit to Harvard to the Big House because, Harvard to the Big House was the guy that, whoops, sorry about that, that was, here I'm giving credit to Harvard to the Big House because it was his blog that really got me started on this and made me realize, wow, wait, that's right, they did enrich avian flu at Erasmus while I was there. That's a little weird. I know all about this stuff. And so it got me really fired up, and I actually did lots of videos on it. I did one here. This one on the bottom, I think, is about, the proximal origin paper. And then a year later, Vanity Fair and Newsweek and Tucker Carlson covered it. And if you listen carefully to what Tucker Carlson's going to say, he's going to say something about a guy by the name of Jamie Metzel.
Lancet letter to censor anyone on social media who mentioned the possibility of a lab leak. It can't be true. The Lancet says it's not true. 27 eminent scientists say it's not true. Only a few scientists in the face of all of this dared to speak up. One of them was called Gilles Dumenov. He formed a group of researchers called DTASTIC. That's an acronym for Decentralized Radical Autonomous Search Team, something that all scientists should be. Jamie Metzel, the former NSC official, soon joined the group. Almost immediately, as early as April of last year, it was becoming clear to Metzel that the lab leak theory was not a conspiracy theory. In fact, it was plausible.
I think that if I had to just bet based on what I've read and logic, I would bet it's most likely this was an accidental leak.
And so now what you see here is one Jamie Metzel, who you heard that Tucker Carlson said was one of the founding members of DTASTIC, and he was never in DTASTIC. And the guy that he said did start DTASTIC was a guy who joined DTASTIC about a year after it was formed, and he was also not originally in DTASTIC. So at the time, the guy who actually started DTASTIC, or the Twitter account that actually started DTASTIC, is Billy Bo Stickson. And if you know anything about Twitter, if you start a direct messaging group, there's only one account that is the curator of who gets in and who gets out. And that's Billy Bo Stickson. So before DTASTIC split in half, and before I spoke out about transfection, I was still all on board with this is probably a lab leak. And then this story comes out a year later, And now I'm out of DTASTIC. DTASTIC is split, and they talk about this on Tucker Carlson. And they say that these two guys are the start of DTASTIC. Now, what's weird about it is Jamie Metzel is not nobody. He's a former National Security Council staff member of the Clinton administration. It's a pretty trusted Clinton individual. And I think that's really important in terms of putting him in place, because if we go to Jamie Metzel before the pandemic and then go to Jamie Metzel about a year into the pandemic, I think we're going to see some very big parallels between people like him and Peter Thiel and Eric Weinstein and Brett Weinstein and Elon Musk and everyone else who might call themselves a futurist, which usually are subtitle like futurist transhumanist.